Welcome to this edition of True Democrats, the Friday before Memorial Day 2020. What a year it's been. This is the show where we try to light the fire under Democratic candidates and try them to open up that storage, that locked storage case with all the ammunition and policies that the Republicans keep handing to them. And they seem to fail to use, such as economic crises every time the Republicans come into power, like pandemics spreading through the country, like this country coming under attack. Everything you could possibly ask when you're running a campaign, but for some reason Democrats don't use this ammunition and they lose elections. And I'm a frustrated Democrat voter, and this is my attempt to try to get people to kind of focus and not to give. The other thing that drives me crazy too is the Republicans have will not hesitate to attack Democrats using things that don't even exist and that are not true, and they exaggerate, and the Democrats take it, and yet they have the facts and the truth on their side, and they have that ammunition in their belts, and they don't use it. You know, the liberal media is liberal because it's liberty and the free press, and they have the greatest thing that the Republicans and conservatives hate the most, and those are facts.
The argument is that you bought yourself some time and you didn't use it to prepare hospitals. You didn't use it to ramp up testing. Right now, nearly 20 million people are unemployed.
It's so disgraceful the way you say that. Let me just listen. I just went over it.
Or this rant supposed to make people
I just went over it
in an unprecedented crisis.
Nobody thought we should do it, and when I did it.
But what did you do with the time that you bought?
The Democrats have the thing that Republicans hate the most. That's facts and policies that work. And for some reason, the Democrats fail to use that. So we are in the middle of this country slowly opening up. A bunch of states, mostly the ones with the Republican governors, are opening up their states early. Of course, Texas and Florida are opening up their states. The amount of people getting sick from coronavirus has spiked in those states. Part of that problem, and part of why these these Republican governors feel that they can open up these states, and they're talking about business, and we need to reopen up our businesses. And I love the phrase.
We cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself. We're not going to let the cure be worse than the problem.
First of all, we don't have a cure. No, but we'll get to that later. But part of the problem, and I think they're emboldened because of the party channel, Fox Propaganda, is kind of giving them free leeway to do that. And, of course, the president, where he's telling these so-called militias to liberate their states, he's not helping things at all either. But it also starts with the opposition, the Democratic Party. They have not been focused on this, what this country needs. And it's hammered the president and Republicans consistently since we've had a lockdown, and that is...
The numbers are going to go up consistently because our testing is way behind the reality of what the situation is.
Testing, we need testing in order to isolate this pandemic so that we can slow it down and slowly disintegrate it so it doesn't spread. And you must give the press, and of course this is why the Republicans hate the press, because they bring up inconvenient facts, because the Republicans are living in a dreamland and every one of their policies is wrong for this country and everything they do is an affront to this country. But the press and every one of this President Trump's press conferences has attacked them as far as when are we going to get testing? When are we going to get testing?
How could the administration discuss the possibility of reopening the country when the administration does not have an adequate nationwide testing system for this virus? Don't you need a nationwide testing system for the virus before you reopen the country?
We have a great testing system. We have the best testing system in the world.
That ball also has to be taken up by the Democratic candidates, especially those running for elections. And, of course, Joe Biden also. I'm sure Joe Biden said it too, but there's got to be some sort of national commercial. Every Democrat has got to say it on social media. There's got to be, the chorus, I haven't heard a chorus, and I haven't heard the Democrats talk in one voice that we need to get testing. And it's clear because there is no palpable response by President Trump because he keeps changing his tune.
It could be the testing's, frankly, overrated.
We don't need the tests. Oh, we're the best in testing in the country. The only way that you could reopen is that you need to test everybody, and we need to find out where the virus is so we can contain it and it stops spreading. That is the issue during this coronavirus, this Trump and Republican virus that has spread throughout this country. That's the only way to stop it. And of course, this president and the Republicans have fumbled the ball ever since they got it. And of course, the Democrats and the press have been saying it, but the Democrats have got to come up with a single voice in every single day in some sort of national, they have to say it in the states where the Republican senators are running for re-election. We need to help those senators, those Democratic senators who are challenging incumbents, and a consistent barrage about how the Republicans are inept at trying to contain this virus. There isn't a cure yet, but that's as close as we have to a cure, and they haven't implemented the cure yet. So the cure is not worse than the disease. The Republicans are worse than the disease. And I think these Republican governors were kind of beholden by these so-called militias that have come up and are chanting liberty and USA. First of all, these guys are not pro-American. They're anti-American. And what the Democrats have to do is attack this liberty to run around with a virus running around so you can get sick and die is not liberty. To have these people run around to get infected and infect you with a virus that'll kill you is not liberty, and that's not freedom. Freedom is getting this country rid of the coronavirus, not spreading it. And these anti-American demonstrators who in the so-called name of liberty, are trying to get their states to reopen is dangerous, and it's a threat to this country. And the Republicans have to be held accountable for that. And, of course, we're headed into, the fact that, listen, I can understand why the Republicans don't see this because they're focused on one thing, trying to get that stock market up, which, by the way, the stock market doesn't dictate the economy. Workers and jobs dictate the economy. So they're looking at a false sense of what resonates in this country as a good economy. But the other thing is that the Democrats see and that the scientists and doctors see is that we're going to get hit again because you got more people out there spreading this disease around instead of being stuck at home. And that's going to cause more of a problem.
Is that we're going to have two viruses circulating at the same time. This spring that we just went through, February, we had a benefit of having the flu season ended. So we could use all our flu surveillance systems to say, whoops, this is coronavirus. We need to focus. Next fall and winter, we are going to have two viruses circulating. And we're going to have to distinguish between which is flu and which is the coronavirus.
And it just blows my mind. There is no common sense that the Republicans are using. They think they're going to upgrade their election chances of winning in this election by opening up businesses, but yet they don't see that there's going to be another wave of coronavirus spiking up, people who are contaminated and who die, and this will happen during the elections. It just does. It's poor policy. It's poor looking forward. It's as the last Republican president, George W. Bush, said, he doesn't do that vision thing. No Republicans do the vision thing because they're not looking in the future and seeing that more people going out with this virus is going to spread it. And then you want liberty then when you're stuck in a hospital, and then we have to all get back, and the Republican governors are going to be in there too, telling people to lock themselves up at home due to the fact that the coronaviruses are spiking again. And already they're looking like imbeciles. They're looking like imbeciles because their goal as governors is not to help their people or help the state. Their goal is to help the big businesses and corporations and people with stock options. That's their goal, and this is the decisions they make when they're focused on that instead of the health of their citizens that they're sworn to uphold to protect. I think one of the major issues and why Republicans behave this way and why Republicans think this way is that they're all daddy's boys. They all grew up, daddy gave them everything. Daddy got them into the well-to-do schools. Daddy gave them the jobs after the well-to-do schools. Daddy helped them with their grades. When they failed their exams, Daddy threw a couple extra $100,000 to the school, to the dean, Mr. Dean Martin.
That we are here to honor our most generous benefactor and newest freshman.
Dean Martin, great speech, great speech. There's nothing like good, clean business, huh? And a little monkey business.
And they were able to get daddy's money right out of college and into a good job. And they think because of that, they're smarter than everybody else. And every time they get in charge of something, you can see it crumbles and it falls and it burns. And you also see that they don't take blame for it.
I don't take responsibility at all.
Because in their eyes, daddy paid to clean up everything. So everything they touch turns to gold. When in reality, when they're let loose, everything they touch falls and crumbles to the ground. This president was given in the equivalent of $400 million in today's money by his daddy, and he lost it. Daddy gave him the $400 million, but he never told him what to do with it or how to make money with his $400 million. When it was time to go to the Vietnam War, Daddy bought off a doctor to write a note that said he had bone spurs. And then when he wanted to go into business, he wasn't even thinking if he had a talent at anything or he wanted to live the American dream. He went into his daddy's business, which was already there. And he used his daddy's stepladder to get ahead in the world. And, of course, everything he touched deteriorated, turned to stone. He didn't know how to handle anything. He doesn't know how to build anything. And I'm thinking I'm going to try to reiterate this in every episode, how every candidate running either for re-election or trying to unseat a Republican incumbent has to refer to President Trump this way when they're about to talk about him. Oh, well, that President Trump, who, by the way, bankrupt 4 times, lost $400 million, of which his daddy gave him as a gift, created a Trump University, which ripped students off, gave them a worthless piece of paper, but took all their money, never paid off their contractors, never paid off his contractors when they built his golf courses or his hotels for him, and created a charity, a military charity, of which none of the money went to the military. It went into his pocket, it went into his businesses, or it went into his legal fees. And this is all before he became president. You need to have that phrase memorized. So every time you talk about President Trump, we can get it. You can remind these voters of who we're dealing with here and why there's a collapse in the security of this country. Somebody who never had a chance and never fought for what they own, never went into the hard work, went into the planning, went into knowing this is what you have to do in order to succeed. This is what you're going to have to do to get through failures and to get through disappointments and to pick yourself up and to battle through it and then to achieve. Someone who has not done that is not going to know how to stop a pandemic running through this country. They're not going to look at it and say, oh, we need to do this, we need to do this. He thinks, he's a one-trick pony. The stock market is his key to success, which is totally baloney also. All you have to do is take the point in the fact that, Hillary Clinton didn't win, although she did win with the most votes in history, more votes than Donald Trump. And the stock market was doing very good then too, but so was the economy, doing a lot better than the last Republican in the White House. Yet he was able to get all these votes because even though the stock market was doing well in middle America, they don't have stock portfolios. They have jobs, and jobs are lagging behind. And of course, it's ironic, though, that because the Republicans have lower wages, have no health care. That's the reason why the middle of America is lagging behind, and yet they keep not voting Democrats to run things, which I blame on the Democrats, and that's why this channel was invented. But back to Donald Trump. The guy never built anything in his life where he had to actually work for it. Everything was given to him, and that's why a lot of investors that invested with him lost their money, and he gained money and walked away from it. He's a scam artist. But that's part of the Republican Party. The last Republican president, George W. Bush, never worked a day in his life, yet he owned a baseball team. I mean, how is he going to stop anything from us being attacked? And then he gave up the chase for Osama bin Laden and went after Saddam Hussein so that the Halliburton stock options can go up. That and because Saddam Hussein tried to assassinate his daddy. But again, he's focused on other things instead of the well-being of this country. And the Democrats have got to start focusing on that. Let's get back to this pandemic.
We cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself. We're not going to let the cure be worse than the problem.
You know, the Republicans always come up with these phrases and slogans that mean absolutely nothing. They remind me of beer commercials.
Bud Wise.
Born on dating. It's the day your bud was born because fresh beer tastes better.
Larry?
I mean, born on dating for beer was not even an issue, but the beer company made that up and made it a thing, like it was supposed to sell more beer. But the Republicans are the same thing. They bring up things that mean absolutely nothing, and they sell it to the American people, and some of the people are sold on it because the Democrats do not challenge or say, wait, this is totally baloney. This is what's going on. And one of them is the cure is more painful or more dangerous than the disease. There is no cure. The Republicans don't have a cure. As a matter of fact, social distancing is meant to stop the spread and to isolate. And then if you had testing, which is the key component, which everybody knew since January, that was going to be where we're going to find out how to locate this virus. The Republicans, and in particular President Trump, failed miserably. And now we have it running rampant through the country, and we don't know where it is. And when we did quarantine ourselves, there was no testing to find out where it was. So it's not the cure that's worse than the pandemic.
So when we have a lot of cases, I don't look at that as a bad thing. I look at that as, in a certain respect, as being a good thing.
It's actually the Republicans are worse than the pandemic. But all these Republicans come from these well-connected families who really didn't have any challenges and were given everything they were given from daddy and daddy's money, and great-granddaddy did all the work. Great-granddaddy was probably a Democrat because he understood that giving back to your country and giving back to your society actually helps everybody in the long run. And then they said, okay, daddy kept giving me the money. I don't want to give it away to this country. I want to keep it all to myself, hence the tax cuts, which, by the way, they all want that. You got millionaires and billionaires getting these stimulus payments back when they don't need it, and small businesses need it bad, and they're not getting a dime. And that's because these leisure boys, these daddy's boys who are in charge of the Republican Party don't want to give back to this country. And of course, they don't want to figure out problems, and they can't solve problems. And that's why they created their own little propaganda channel, the Fox Party station, because the liberal media, who deals with facts, was shedding too much light on their inabilities to govern. So they have this Fox propaganda channel. What do they call it? Fair and balanced. So they balance the lies, balance the facts with the lies.
If hydrochloroquine has side effects, none of which are death, by the way.
Have you seen any side effects or any instances where it has not worked?
I've not seen big side effects. No one's complained about anything meaningful.
Those who took it in a vulnerable population, including those with respiratory or other conditions, they died.
Keeping America safe is too much of a responsibility for these leisure boy, daddy boy Republicans. We need to vote Democrat. Something else that's big talk for the Democrats this weekend is the so-called vetting process for the vice presidential pick of Joe Biden. And I find these picks very interesting. Most of the time, they're done for a politically motivated, strategical reason. Whether to get those whoever they're picked to bring a state with them, to somebody who kind of reflects on the presidential candidate weekly, so that the presidential candidate can be considered strong. But this year, I think it's really just a no-brainer. I know there's been a lot of talk. Joe Biden has vowed to make a woman his VP. And, of course, he's getting a lot of pressure to make it a woman of color. But I think there's this pick is basically a no-brainer. And each day it becomes less and less of a no-brainer. First, a little history about vice presidential candidates. Back when Reagan picked Bush, that was considered, Reagan wanted somebody who was not too much of a heavyweight because he wanted to carry the banner of smaller government and less taxes. And the first George Bush wasn't considered somebody who would rival him or who would as a matter of fact, George Bush even said his...
What I'm saying is that this type of what I call a voodoo economic policy, it just isn't going to work.
But he got picked as a vice presidential candidate also. And unfortunately for us, when George Bush was running for president, he picked Dan Quayle. So he was doing the same thing that Ronald Reagan was doing, trying to pick a running mate who wouldn't overshadow him, trying to get somebody a little bit, I should say, shallower, and pick Dan Quayle, which is just a horrible idea to think that Dan Quayle would lead this country if he was president. Of course, it's funny. I kept thinking at the time, those 4 years that he was president, what would happen if Dan Quayle actually was president? Would he be that bad? And, of course, we had George W. Bush, which I think the two men are very similar. And, boy, I stopped wishing those wishes ever since. But Bill Clinton came up probably with the best selection of a VP. And I think he picked it as someone who he can wrestle ideas with, someone who's young and energetic as he was in his mid-40s, someone who I think he selected him as an advisor more than as a vice presidential candidate, which is in the benefit of this country. And Al Gore would have made a great president as if it wasn't for that whole,
But that's another story.
And then, of course, the second George Bush, George W. Bush, totally out of his league in politics and in running for this president. So he picked one of his daddy's friends, Dick Cheney, to be president. So the idea was that Dick Cheney was going to hold George W. Bush's hand through his presidency and help him. And we saw what happened with that. But the idea, again, was focused on what's going to happen to you after you get out of office. If you're running for president, you got to pick a vice president candidate who's going to carry your policies forward and who would make a great candidate for president themselves, who's going to be a strong leader, who can handle crises. And, I mean, listen, George W. Bush should have never been running for president in the first place, so let's scratch those 8 years. But Obama selected Joe Biden, which was a great choice, a guy who knew policy and a guy who would make a great president. And that's, I think, I still think so today. I mean, even Hillary Clinton picked Tim Kaine of Virginia, and that is to grab Virginia, to keep Virginia as a Democratic state. Of course, it worked, and it still didn't work out.
But that's another story.
But then he made one of the worst choices, and we're in this problem because of it, is that for some reason he didn't tap Joe Biden to succeed him. He tapped at Hillary Clinton, and that caused a whole bunch of malarkey, and it caused a whole lot of problems in the last 4 years because of it. And it just doesn't make any sense. The whole point of having a vice president is to carry your policies forward and to build on your policies, hoping that your policies are making this country bigger and better, more developed. And it just, I mean, just the idea didn't make sense, and it aggravates me just talking about it. So coming back to Joe Biden now and his pick for vice president, he has to look at somebody who will make a great president themselves and who is strong enough to carry his policies on after him, but who's well-versed in crises and knows how to handle them. And, of course, there's only one pick that I can see coming out of this, and that is Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan. Right now, it takes the two categories I just covered. One, politically strategical, and also someone who would make a great president in their own right. She has both those qualities. Number one, you got Michigan, and she'll carry Michigan, which would be a big blow to the Trump campaign right off the bat. And second of all, she's handling some of the biggest crises her state has seen in who knows how long, and she's handling it with deft precision, with grace.
I want to thank people on the ground who have been helping one another. When I toured the shelter yesterday, it was incredible to see the spirit of the community and the volunteering and the attitude that they're all in this together. We truly are. And thank you for inspiring me in these challenging days.
With calmness, with steady outlook, and with steady hand.
So I think about the demonstrators here today, and I understand the frustration that people are feeling. I'm frustrated too. None of us wants to be here in this moment, but we are, and we have to do the best that we can.
And that is what you need. And I don't think there's anybody. Listen, you're going to get a lot of people that are going to say, listen, you should take this, you should take this. But she is so far qualified above anybody else, and she's proven it today. You don't have to go and figure things out or get the FBI to vet her. All you have to do is look today in the news toward Michigan and see that she is handling floods, unexpected floods, the coronavirus, the crazy right-wing militia radicals who are threatening her state with more coronavirus spreading, and she's handled it very well.
I sent a letter to President Trump requesting a federal emergency declaration to ensure that we have the support we need to protect Midland area residents.
There shouldn't be any other choice, and he'd be crazy just to pick anybody else. But he does, doing his vetting process, he vetted, or he told Amy Klobuchar to get herself vetted by the FBI. And I'm not quite sure why, if this is political theater, that he's going to look at everybody. Maybe it's to calm all the groups, the liberal groups who want him to pick their person, which I guess is okay. But again, the True Democrats supports Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan as Joe Biden's vice presidential candidate, as vice presidential running mate. And I don't think there's man or woman more qualified than the governor of Michigan. So that's this episode of True Democrats. I'm Adam Carr, and I'm wishing you a happy Memorial Day. And we will see you next week.
Tonight, the daughter of a woman whose highest goal was a future for her children talks to our nation's oldest party about a future for us all. Tonight, the daughter of working Americans tells all Americans that the future is within our reach if we're willing to reach for it. Tonight, the daughter of an immigrant from Italy has been chosen to run for president in the new land my father came to love. Our faith that we can shape a better future is what the American dream is all about. The promise of our country is that the rules are fair. If you work hard and play by the rules, you can earn your share of America's blessings. Those are the beliefs I learned from my parents, and those are the values I taught my students as a teacher in the public schools of New York City.